Welcome. This is Tax Pro Nation, the home of the independent tax professionals, where you can find a tax community, maximize your earnings, and live life on your own terms. I'm your host, Imelda Ledesma, COO of Pronto Tax School. In this episode, Andy and Daren will lead the conversation about the importance of keeping a paper trail and breaking down the total expenses in S Corp returns. It's a handy practice if your client ever needs to explain where the totals originated from.
And that's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for the update. I know for the business clients, what I'm hoping to do, we've been doing this multi-part business tax prep process that we're trying to kind of build together, get a bunch of input from the mentors, also from the other members. And I'd like to try to deliver this document to you guys by end of next week, just so that, heading to the March 15th deadline is the S Corp initial deadline. There is so much demand for this kind of work. And I'll just give an example. Like, there's a couple CPAs that I refer here locally in my area. Nobody's taking new clients, like new business clients at all. So the demand is so much more than the supply for this type of work, that it's just such a massive opportunity. And I want to make sure all of us are positioned to take advantage of it. And so hopefully with this document as well, like, this can be something that, Daren, another person that knows how to do this work themselves, could take the document and then customize it however you want it and show it to somebody else on the team that then can be more effective in doing the work. So it's really intended to be a way for us to build our business, build our teams. So if you don't mind, Daren, I'm kind of like pretty deep into this here. I've gotten a lot of good input. Okay, you mind if we just jump right into it and I kind of ask a question? Okay.
And then we'll break out just to let everybody know, as well as we'll answer questions as we go, and then we'll probably carve out the last 10 minutes if anybody has anything specific related to this or outside that I can answer.
Yeah. Awesome. So we found actually a pretty big variation in the so reviewing the business's financial reports, like profit and loss statement, balance sheet, and then seeing that the records aren't in perfect order, however we want to kind of use that, however we want to describe that, right? There was a pretty big variation between people that really want to get the records, like the financial records themselves, like correct as possible before you start tax prep, versus people that'll kind of, jump into it and kind of adjust it as it goes. So moving beyond that for a second here, you were talking about getting the reports out of QuickBooks Online or out of the accounting system into Excel. And that's like a part of your process for working with business clients. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So
when I use that Excel, just kind of add one on there though, is when you download it into Excel, that way I can track if I change anything, or it basically becomes my work papers for preparing the tax return. So, because even on that, one of the things, I don't know if there's an actual section on it there, but the good thing about Excel though, and making notes, is people's chart of accounts are usually terrible. Like, they have way too many categories. And so I end up combining a lot. Like, they might have office supplies, office software, office plates, 19 different categories for office that's spread all over the place. So I make notes on the Excel, like, included this in office supplies. This is included in here. And also, something I only started doing 2 years ago, which has actually been very beneficial in Lacert, is Lacert, I used to just put in total numbers. So like in office supplies or office expense, I would get the total of everything that I combined together in Excel and just put that number in.
Yeah.
But what I do now is, because in Lacert, when you're inputting, you can do multiple lines. And so if I use 3 or 4 different lines on that Excel sheet of different categories, I put just each number individually. I don't label it out or anything, but then at a later date, it's, where did that number come from? Oh, it was these 5 numbers added together to get to office expense. And then that corresponds to my Excel, because the hard part is a year later, the person goes to get a loan and they come back that the tax return doesn't match the financials, because the financials say office expense is 500, you put down 7,000 and you didn't write off any supplies. So that step has helped me down the road, as far as you mark on Excel if you're combining anything, but to list those numbers out individually, it also helps you at the end of preparing the return, that if something's off, if you have 5 numbers added together and you put in the total, if you misadded one of those numbers, you're not going to be able to catch it. You're not going to be able to find it. You're just going to be off and it's nowhere in sight. If you list them out, it helps you to double check the return. So you can make sure the number in Lacert in the subtotal matches the Excel spreadsheet. So sorry, just a quick note on that.
And I think there's, and that's what I'm going to try to get to in this section, right? Is that there's like so many different variations of that where your record that you're creating when you do these more involved business tax returns is so much more likely to be viewed by another party or need to be like looked at and like, to show how you arrived at that. So I think like the whole work papers thing, right? Like I didn't know what that, I was like, I don't know about that. It sounds like a lot of work, but the essentially is Excel files that are annotated and kind of could allow you to see, if you need to go back to it, or if you have a third party asking about it, to be able to kind of see how you arrived at the numbers that went on the tax return. Is that right?
Correct. And that's where it's really, you got to shift your mindset as well. Because I'm guilty of it too. On the personal return side, you get it done. The client doesn't look at it. They do the DocuSign
Right.
and you get paid and you e-file it. And 90% of the time, it's never going to be brought up again, ever. Business returns are different. They're going to be getting lines of credit. They're going to have city stuff, county stuff, insurance stuff, workers' comp stuff.
Investors.
There's a lot of third parties involved with businesses. So you really have to prepare the return and have the work papers with the mindset of, can this be explained to a third party? I still really don't. I don't have that mindset on personal returns. But it took some training and time to change my mindset from the way that I've always done things when it comes to business returns. And it's been very helpful to have a different mindset going into a business return when you're preparing it. They're like, hey, can I explain that to somebody else?
Yeah. And so from a mechanical point of view, it's what I have on here, let me tell me if this sounds like a good process to you or how it compares to your process, is to take the business records, the financial records, the profit and loss statement, the balance sheet into Excel. Okay. Then we'll have a standard format where it's like a multi, and I'll give you guys the format we're using, but like a multi-tab spreadsheet, one for the P&L, one for the balance sheet, and then have it be like I just been titling it unadjusted. So it's like, this is a straight export out of the client file. There's no, I haven't gone into it, made any notes, made any different colors or anything like that. Save that to maintain, hey, this is what was brought to us. Then resave it as a different file called adjusted, which is then going to contain the notes, the different colors and that kind of thing. How do you handle, because sometimes the whole file maintenance and file storage thing, it's actually a potentially, especially when you have team members, it's one of these things that you don't think it's that important, but when you can't find any files, or it's how do you handle the file, like saving, maintenance, naming, that kind of thing?
So in Canopy, I tried to make it simple. Could I do a screen share?
Yeah, go for it.
Do you want to continue? Yeah. Let me pull this up here. Oh, hold on. Zoom.
Yeah, while you're setting that up, Darren, I was just going to highlight a comment from Reba. So we went up 10% as far as pricing. No one has complained at all. And most of the people, most of the clients said if they're happy with their current provider, they've already are somewhat aware that I don't have any better options. So, that like I've already looked around a little bit or peeked around, asked some other people. So yeah.
And I've priced it out, and I mean TurboTax for like Schedule C and D in a long form is going to charge $300 to do it on TurboTax, and so if you're 500 and it's done for them, it's a no-brainer. So I even have a feeling that if anybody was price sensitive, once they ask around, if they can even find somebody to do it, as Andy said, that they're going to be coming back. And then let me see here, craft. Let me just make sure this client got it in there. I think I have already uploaded it. There was one that I did. Yeah, I thought I already had that one. Okay, keep talking, Andy. I just need 2 seconds. Sorry.
It'd be interesting to hear while Darren's getting that going, you guys, from people either in the chat or to speak up is, so for the file saving and retention and especially with the idea of this is what I got from the client. So this is the condition that things came in, no changes. It's like, this is from the client's bookkeeper, right? And then having a new file, in my opinion, is very important where it's like my file, I can make changes, etc. Are you guys doing that in a document management system in like Canopy? Is it more of like you have it on your server? And is it standardized, or would it even be like sometimes it's done one way or another different teammate does it a different way? Is this only like a me issue that I've had trouble keeping track of the files, or how do you guys handle it? Is it a separate system where you're like, hey, I'm going to keep it all in here, or is it more of like a more traditional server type? All right, so TaxDome, yeah, this is like we've had so many advertisements for TaxDome. I'm like, I like connect with them. They're very popular. It seems like so using OneDrive or server. Okay, so yeah, I mean the whole idea of if you ever think about would you need to get these files out of Canopy or out of TaxDome or out of another system is a little bit of a, it's a brain teaser, I guess you could say. So some people I think will save it on a more traditional drive or server.
Download files. Yeah, so and that's where I recommend moving away from a traditional drive or server. One, okay. It's a lot harder networking wise if you have employees. Two, accessibility to it. It's not on the cloud. Yeah. Maybe it is if you're using OneDrive or Google Docs. But then there's no templates, there's no anything else.
Right.
Spend the money in the beginning for TaxDome, Canopy, or something for organizational management. It helps so much. And that's where, let me share my screen so that I can show you.
Yeah, a couple other comments here from my Carbon links directly to OneDrive, and then I believe it's Rachel that said, yeah, it's different. Have a folder in Canopy for the original docs and then another for finished return and adjustments needed. So that standardized process of like for every client, she can look and see.
Yeah, so that's where I keep it easy. Under 2023, I have all these outstanding documents, and then I have completed.
Okay.
It doesn't get moved into completed till the return's done.
Okay.
If it's still working on it, it's open there. Same for the personal. This is where all their upload documents, everything goes. It all sits in the folder. Once it's entered into the cert, it goes into completed. This way, what I try to stay away from is reviewing things that don't need to be reviewed. So if I've looked at it and it's in and done, it goes in completed. That way I don't have to look at it again. And nobody's allowed to touch the completed folder or bring anything out of it or do anything. Once it's in there, it's in there. And that way you don't edit or anything. And then as far as if it goes forward, That's where we got correspondence, planning, and then copy of the tax return. So anything from a further note outside of done or not done, then you get into the other files here.
And do your teammates, especially with, seeing you grow your team and add more employees and stuff, and I know you've been working on like standard operating procedures and things like that. So do you find that team members, do you give them like clear instructions, like this is how it's supposed to be done, and then they do it? Is it still kind of a work in process? Do people have different ways of maintaining the files or handling the files?
Little bit of a work in progress. So we're still kind of sorting our subtasks. So we've got operating procedures in place, but we're still tinkering Canopy for the automation. And we've had several things that are going to save a ton of time. But no, everybody's very clear on there's things that are like we call the hard nose. It's like if something's in, you don't move files around. That's where it's like I try to keep blanket simple rules. Like if it's a new file that came in, it goes in the 2023 thing, and it just stays there till somebody does something with it. You should not be like moving. People aren't allowed to like move files around where willy-nilly or try to help in any way. It's all very straightforward.
And allowing those files to just live in the document management system that you've chosen to work with. I guess at some point, if you ever needed to or wanted to, you just figure, hey, I could export it and kind of like take it. But for now, I'm not going to like bother with trying to like retrieve files onto a server and all that. It's just more streamlined. Okay.
Streamlined. It's in here. It's under their name.
Gotcha. And then so for the actual Excel documents with the financial statements that you're working with and adjusting and combining accounts and making, getting it to the point where you feel like you're going to now prepare the return, is that being saved as a separate file, or do you think that's a good idea to save it as a separate file? It doesn't matter. How do you look at that?
I just download the once I'm ready to where the P&L is at, I download it from my start point. So what'll happen though is, let's say I just download it the one time. So anything that changes from there will be annotated or tabbed inside that one Excel file. Gotcha. I don't want to download it multiple times or have multiple versions or multiple files. I try to keep it to one file. All the changes go in there. Because the unfortunate part is, and this will happen because it's real life. You download the P&L from QuickBooks. You're going everything else, and this is where I'll refer back to Andrea. Andrea starts with the balance sheet first, not the P&L. I remember that from one of her things. I think she's still sticking to that. Correct me if I'm wrong. But because of that, Andy's being that good. With starting with the balance sheet, it helps you clean up the balance sheet first so that your P&L is actually done. Because the worst thing that happens is you get the P&L downloaded into Excel, you're working on Lacert, you get everything in, you go to the balance sheet, and all of a sudden $3,000 worth of expenses were put to uncategorized asset.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Imelda. Join us next week as we continue to share mini audio clips of step-by-step S Corp tax prep process. If you are interested in listening to the full process and want to be part of our Dream Team community, please visit prontotaxschool.com or email us to support@prontotaxschool.com. Being part of the Dream Team membership comes with getting expert support, top-rated training programs, and weekly video live events.